All right, everybody. Welcome to our MLH live stream, our info session, our first info session of the season, in preparation for our summer 2022 fellowship kickoff. We're all really, really excited to be here. Let me go ahead and introduce my co-presenters for today. So here I am. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. Currently, I am the head of MLH Fellowship Admissions, have been with MLH since last May. Some of you may have seen some of my fellowship related events at Local Hack Day if you've been attending and so on. Before that, I spent many years as a director of admissions at Flatiron School. So I've been in admissions in the ed tech space for a long time. And when not running admissions for educational programs, I'm a giant Star Wars nerd. Absolutely love the Book of Boba Fett. Finished it a couple weekends ago and am obsessed. And am also obsessed with my cats. And so I provide to you an adorable picture of them because why not? With me today to tell you the story of the fellowship is Guillermo Sanchez. Guillermo, you want to say a few words about yourself?
Hey everyone, my name is Guillermo Sanchez. I'm very adventurous and very outgoing. I like to try a lot of new things. If you notice on my little GIF there, I play guitar. I like to go climbing mountains, jog them up, and also go biking with friends, and also play music. I love my guitar that I have.
Guillermo has all the hobbies. We're all in awe of Guillermo and how he spends his time. And I'm also here with my colleague Jay, the president of the fellowship. Jay, you want to say a few words?
Sure. Hi, everybody. It's really nice to see such a turnout. Guillermo, I did not know that you played the axe like that. I'm super impressed and always learning new things. My background is in education and technology. I was at General Assembly as the U.S. delivery director for a long time. I love to snowboard. I love yoga. And I am a former, I'll say really bad hacker, but that's me. Great to see everyone.
Awesome. And so we are here to tell you a little bit about our fellowship. We've got a lot to cover on today's agenda. So let me just walk you through it a little bit. Jay is going to take you through a little bit of the history of the fellowship. Many of you may know about this if you've been around the MLH space for a long time, but we're always changing things up, and so we'll be sharing a little bit of that, as well as some recent fellow outcomes. We'll get into some details as to how the program works, from admissions all the way through to attending the program as a fellow. Give you some tips and tricks on what's going on this summer and how to be the most successful applicant you could be. Guillermo and I will do a Q&A together, and then we'll share some important upcoming dates. I have a question in the chat about recording. Yes, we are recording this. We will also have that recording up on YouTube shortly after the session, if I'm not mistaken. So if you have to drop for any reason, know that you'll have access to the material even after we're done here. So no worries about that. Thank you for asking. For now, though, I'm going to turn it over to Jay to walk everyone through the history of the fellowship. So take it away, Jay.
Thank you, Amanda. All right. So, how did the fellowship start? Well, to talk about the fellowship, you really got to talk about Major League Hacking as a community. And the truth is, we are the largest community of early career developers. We did some research earlier this year, and we found that 1 of every 3 computer science graduates in the United States have attended or been part of some type of Major League Hacking event, a hackathon, a local hack day, whatever it is. And the truth is that the companies we work with partner with us to reach you, each of you on the call. We have 115,000 annual community members, 1,500 worldwide events each year. Our alumni is now growing to over 700. Our fellowship alumni base is now over 700, 95 countries, 4,000 universities, really a tremendous community of learners, engineers, technologists that we've cultivated since 2013. So the story of the fellowship actually goes right back to 2013. And in March 2020, I'm sure all of you remember how crazy the world got when COVID was kind of brought across the globe. And in March of 2020, it becomes, a national emergency. The state of the pandemic kind of begins. And then slowly over time, what we heard from our student community was our internships are getting canceled. Like, this is terrible. This stinks. And so what we did was we started our own internship of sorts, an internship alternative called the Fellowship. GitHub was our first partner, and we made the announcement in May of 2020. And we kind of got to work. So that first year, we had a whole bunch of people who were excited to do something with their summer, to work on open source projects, to get involved, and to not lose the opportunity to contribute and learn. And I'm going to skip a couple of years now. When you look at the fellowship today, we estimate that we've had thousands of pull requests emerge for our partners on behalf of our fellows. Again, we have over 700 alumni. I went through our December fellowship graduation cohort, and already just 2 months out, over 50% of those fellows have jobs or internships lined up. A lot of them are already back at school. So, that doesn't even count them. We have a whole bunch of partners, and this is going to be our 7th fellowship batch. So really, really cool. Such a tremendous extension of our community, has built so much momentum in such a short period of time. So that's the story of the fellowship. I want to tell you a bit more about some individual fellow outcomes that we're really, really proud of. And, if you're on the call today, I'm sure you're thinking, one of a few things. What is this thing called the fellowship? 2, or maybe, I've heard about it from my friends. I saw it on Discord. Is this really for me? So we're going to start to try to answer that question for you. And I want to tell you a bit about one of our most recent fellows, Annie, who I sat down with a couple of weeks ago. Super cool, based in San Fran, if I'm not mistaken. She's a 2-time fellow. So actually she was in our fellowship 2 batches ago. And then more recently, she did our summer fellowship with Meta as part of our production engineering track. And these are real quotes that she said as part of our conversation. Shortly after her second stint, she applied and had 22 interviews lined up in 2 months. And, she did attribute a lot of it because of the experience she got from the fellowship. Obviously, because, she was matched to Meta, that contributed to some of that brand name recognition as well on her LinkedIn. The other thing that really stood out was she talked about how much her interviewers and the hiring managers he spoke with loved her open source experience, because she learned how to work in existing code base, work in other people's code, and read other people's code. And what's not pictured here is what she said was, it's not something that comes easy, and it's not something that a lot of people have. And that's one of the really unique parts about this program, is that you're working in an open source community and open source code bases, in big code bases, and really expanding on your skill set in a way that, we really feel is unmatched by a lot of the programs out there. The other thing we hear consistently is how great the people are in the program. I did see a couple of people say, "Oh, look, it's Amanda." Amanda is a legend in her own right, and just that personality and that culture has scaled to our pod leaders and to our alumni and to our hiring managers. And you'll hear from Guillermo later on too. But just such an amazing group of people we have working on this program, and all of our alumni are really fantastic too. So there is a couple other just kind of stories. These are just real things that I came upon last night as we were finalizing the slides. And by the way, cool gamer, yes, you absolutely can ask questions as you have them. We'll do our best to field them and answer. These are 3 real fellows who had an email exchange with our co-founder, John, from last summer, saying that, I'm not going to read them for you, but they're at places like Google, like Amazon, VC-backed startups, like a company called Swag Up. And it's just clear that the fellowship really does something for them, experience-wise, impact-wise, and outcome-wise that they otherwise would not have had. So yeah, those are some of the impact stories. I'm going to turn it back to Amanda to take us through the next part of the info session. And Amanda, over to you.
Thank you. So Jay gave us a really great picture of what can happen if you're a fellow in the fellowship, and where can you end up, and what are some of the success stories that you can see happen. I see a question in the chat. Speaking of success stories, are career switchers welcome in this program? Absolutely. We have several. I have a bootcamp background. Jay has a boot camp background. We have several boot camp grads in the fellowship right now. For instance, we have several self-taught students in the program right now. In fact, I believe Anne, in a previous life, went to FIT, Fashion Institute of Technology here in New York. So that is a big swing, right, from fashion into tech, and so she's been able to do that successfully. So thank you for asking. Speaking of, let's talk about how to make this work for you. Jay and I were talking yesterday, and I described the fellowship as the best kept secret in EdTech because we have this amazing community of amazing developers, and people don't always know what the fellowship is all about. So let's get into the details. So the first thing to know is that there's actually 3 different full-time tracks that someone can be, or I should say 12-week tracks, that someone can be a part of as part of the fellowship. We have our traditional sort of open source track. We have an externship track where you could be paired with companies on closed source projects. For instance, we ran an externship program with GitHub last fall. Which was very successful. And we have a production engineering track that we run at least right now we're running that annually. We do anticipate we'll be running production engineering this coming summer, and that is dedicated to the skills needed to launch a career in production engineering, or you may know of it as DevOps. For all of these tracks, there's an age requirement. You do need to be 18 or older to apply. Your time commitment is at least 30 hours a week. You'll need English proficiency to be a part of the program. And for most of our tracks, you need proficiency in at least one programming language. But if you're specifically interested in production engineering, you'll need Python, and Unix is very strongly preferred. I see a question in the chat about software engineering. Both open source and externship tracks fall under the software engineering sort of umbrella. So they're very, very similar tracks. There is no maximum age. We've had people in the fellowship well into their careers, in their 30s and 40s and 50s and so on. So please don't feel like you have aged out of a program like this. Though I do like to tell people who are a little bit more advanced in their careers, such as myself, to be perfectly honest, a lot of our fellows do tend to be college age or just out of college. So I think our average student is somewhere in their lower to mid 20s. But that does not mean we're not open to anybody who's interested. How does it work? Well, the way we put together a track, yes, this program is remote. Thank you for asking in chat. The way we put together a track, and we're actually in the process of doing this for our summer semester right now, is we have action steps that take place with our partners, and then action steps that take place with our fellows. So with our partners, for instance, when we partner with GitHub, let's say, we get on a bunch of calls with them, and we collect a lot of information from them about, what are the projects they want fellows to work on, what are the types of fellows that they need in terms of educational experience, programming experience, projects, interest, and so on, so that we can understand what are the projects that they want our fellows to work on. At the same time, we're working with incoming fellows to gather applications. All of that is happening right now, and screen applicants for the requisite set of skills. So we are both looking for your overall coding proficiency. And at the end there, you'll see in step 3, we're looking for a project that matches your coding proficiency. So maybe you're an amazingly proficient programmer in, I don't know, Basic or Fortran or something. But if we don't have a Basic or Fortran project, you're probably not going to get matched to that particular fellowship semester. That said, if you are a Python dev, a JavaScript dev, a C++ dev, like we have lots and lots of projects that you could potentially be matched with. So your job as an incoming fellow is to do an amazing job in the application process, get through all of our interviews, we'll talk about that in a minute, and set yourself up for success so that when we have a project come down the pipe that matches your skill set, you're an easy and obvious match for that project. So that's what's going on sort of behind the scenes as we get ready for any given semester of the fellowship. So what happens once you're in the fellowship? Well, I'd like to invite Guillermo to jump on with me to talk about this, because he is, among other things, currently acting as a pod leader and can speak a little bit to what happens in pods. So Guillermo, can you talk a little bit about the concept of a pod? How do we create a pod? How do these fellows work together? And how do you go about creating a fun experience in your pod?
Yeah. So for pod matching, you get matched based on other students that are going to be working either on the same project or on the same languages that you understand, as well as your pod leader. They should be able to understand the programming languages and some of the technologies you'll be working on throughout the fellowship. And throughout the pod meetings, it's really fun. We have our daily stand-up meetings, which are like really simple and pretty simple updates to like make sure who knows who's doing what and who's working on what, and also to get help from your pod leader. Maybe you're stuck on a Python assignment or you're stuck on a JavaScript code and you want your pod leader to help you out. They're going to be there to support you. And also, we do a lot of fun stuff. We do demo days where the students present what they've been working on to other fellows. We do show and tells where students get to teach each other some other skills. For example, we've seen some people teach us how to go on the metaverse. We've seen some other fellows teach us how to do how to cook a nice flatbread or some really good Mexican enchiladas, you name it. And also some games. We also have for example, on my pod, we have our Wednesday game nights where we play a couple of games like Codename, Scriblio, and what are some other games that we played? I forgot the name. Gargantic Phone, something like that. But yeah, we have a ton of games, other games that we play there, and they're really fun. So it's not just stand-up meetings where you just talk about what you're doing. We also have like gather towns and other special events too.
I love that. I feel like you would destroy me at code names. I love code names. I'm very bad at code names. It generally doesn't go very well. But yeah, and Guillermo's point here is that we're making this both a social and a learning experience for everyone. We want people to have fun. We want people to feel like they can, you're not just building skills, though you are doing that. You're building a network of people who will, be your colleagues as you move into your early career. So now I'm going to turn it over to Jay and Guillermo to talk a little bit about what it looks like to actually build the software that you're building as a fellow. Take it away, you guys.
Yeah. So, obviously the biggest thing is authenticity, right? Making sure that we are putting our fellows in a position to learn, but in an authentic open source environment. And what we do behind the scenes, at a couple slides back, you saw that as we admit people to the fellowship, we are scoping projects with our partners. And who do we work with from our partners? Well, we work with a variety of senior engineers, developer relations leaders, open source maintainers. These are real professional engineers who are building out a set of projects for each of the fellows and their pods to work on. So on the right there, you could see different projects that have been scoped specific to Android debugging tools, GitHub runners, and data layer abstraction APIs. You have access to those maintainers that scope the projects on a regular cadence. Each project scope does vary. It depends on the partner, and we do our best to match people, as Guillermo said, to the technologies that they're comfortable with and interested in. So we've had projects that are focused on research and design. We've had projects focused on feature implementation. We've had projects that incorporate documentation and code redesigns, all of that. And in terms of just some of the questions I've heard about related to this, from a data science perspective, we do have projects focused on, Jupyter notebooks and kind of data tools, but not specifically data science. There are Web3 projects. We have an entire suite of projects that are focused on Anchor, that are focused on building NFT minters. So a wide variety of projects coming from our maintainers there. And Guillermo, I feel like I stole a lot of the thunder here, but what else would you add in terms of like high level project overview? We are going to go through a week by week breakdown with Guillermo and talk about his experience directly. So if everybody just stays there for 1 second, you'll see what I'm talking about. But Guillermo, anything I missed here?
No, you really covered the basics and the fundamentals of the project overview and how we do the matching process.
Awesome. And the big thing is we want our fellows to leave with open source contributions that have them stand out, right? Like these go into your portfolio. These really differentiate you versus the rest of the crowd, right? Not a lot of people are coming out with open source pull requests that have been accepted by Meta, that have been accepted by Solana, by maintainers at GitHub, by VC-backed startups. It's really something special. So what we're going to do now is quickly walk through a typical program experience. So we've segmented, for example, our open source track for weeks 1 through 12. And on the bottom, you'll see the project work that the fellow is asked to complete during that time, the programming, effectively the live streams and the learning opportunities we provide, and then a spotlight in orange on the right there. So this sample is actually from Guillermo's pod that's currently active. They're working with Meta on a live content clustering project. Guillermo, can you talk a little bit about what your fellows were up to in weeks 1 and 2?
Yeah, during the first weeks, they were onboarding with the Meta maintainers. So they met up with their senior engineer that's leading them, and getting them set up with their AWS account, all their credentials that they need to be able to create their own instances on AWS and deploy a simple version of the system that they're going to be working on, which is an open source full stack platform application for hashing and matching content that can either violate or copyright some infringement issues. And that was actually week 1 and 2.
Awesome. Throughout the rest of the weeks 1 and 2, we provide sessions on how to use GitHub in like the most basic sense, pulling code from GitHub. We have sessions on, what stipends look like, graduation expectations. We do sessions on communication skills, written and spoken. And also the big thing is we have a hackathon, right? And the hackathon is really just kind of a fun way to get the program going. You get assigned into teams, you use your partner project technology. One of the winners from this time was an NFT minter for fellows that was built on Solana, which was really, really cool. So I wanted to call it out. So again, weeks 1 and 2, largely about getting your local dev environment set up and closing out some good first beginner issues. Once you get into weeks 3, 4, and 5, that's when we say the meat starts. So Guillermo, do you want to talk a bit about what weeks 3, 4, and 5 have looked like for your fellows so far too?
Yeah, one of my fellows is actually working on creating what's called a time bucket. And it's basically, if you guys remember some of your technical coding algorithm structures, he's building sort of like a stack. Actually, it's more like a queue. And it matches all the content. It puts it in order that it comes from so that the hasher matcher application processes it in that order, in the queue order. And it indexes all of them based on the time that it was submitted for indexing and matching. And my other fellow, since there's 2 of them, is working on currently deploying his API for the backend, and which is an improvement, some bug fixes and improvements on the API for the backend side of the application. Since it's a full stack application, you'll see everything. There's a front end for it, there's a backend, and there's even some more backend stuff that goes along with the HMA open source project that they're working on. But those are some of the things that you will encounter in those weeks, along with all the way through week 12. I think you're muted, Jay.
Jay, you are muted.
Rookie mistake. What we spotlighted in this particular slide was a series of sessions we run called Cracking the Interview. We call it interview practice in the slide, but Cracking the Code interview. And one of our resident pod leaders runs a weekly session. This particular week is on demystifying and practicing sorting algorithms. Some of the other stuff we do this week, branching with Git and GitHub, resume building, personal branding. We do some interview practice for recursion too, as well as linked lists. So that is weeks 3, 4, and 5. At that point, you're kind of getting into the midway point of the program. You've probably had a pull request or 2 merged and approved. And then we get into weeks 6, 7, and 8. And Guillermo, back over to you to talk about what your fellows will be working on in 6, 7, and 8.
Yeah. So once they finish working on their current PRs that they're going to be submitting for these couple of weeks coming, now they're going to be focusing on what's called a ring buffer. And you guys can look that up, but it's essentially a way that you can categorize and index a lot of processes that you want to go through. In this case, they want to create a ring buffer for all the images that need to get processed for fraud detection, and or whatever you want the images to match for. Like for example, maybe you're a social media company like TikTok and you want to detect images that violate certain community values of TikTok, right? Like no blood, no things like that, right? And so that's what they're going to be working on for the next upcoming weeks, creating that ring buffer and implement it to the API, and as well as do some more test cases and make sure that the PR is good to go and check it up with their maintainers.
And in terms of what we have planned there, it gets a bit more technical as the program moves forward, right? So a bit of the .git folder and what happens behind the scenes with Git and GitHub. We do run a series of sessions on building package managers in different technologies, as well as the interview practice. This particular highlight is from a NLP engineer who came and told us about their day-to-day, what they work on, what it takes to be an NLP engineer, and the things that they would point you to in terms of building the correct prerequisite knowledge. All right, Guillermo, one more time over to you. Can you tell us how your fellows are going to close out the program?
Sure. Before they close out, we're going to do their final submissions on their PRs, make sure that any pending pull requests are resolved, make sure that all the work that they've been doing is polished up and ready to be pushed into the main branch for the project that they're working, along with their maintainers, the help of their maintainers. And they're going to be able to do a demo of that with our other fellows to see all the work that they've been doing since the beginning of the fellowship to culminate with the event. And I believe is it this week or next week when they do the capture the flag, CTF? I forget that one.
It'll be the last week of the program.
Got it. Oh, okay. But yeah, they polish up everything, clean up all their code, make sure that their work is evaluated and pushed.
Awesome. And in terms of what we spotlight in this particular bit, this is just another example of how we're practicing interview practice with APIs. So the final week of the program is really about closing out any potential outstanding pull requests, as well as your remaining maintainer meetings. And then we have a big 1 hour long graduation ceremonies. We share some stories. We invite some of the maintainers to join. And it's really a great opportunity to celebrate what's been achieved over the last 12 weeks. So I'm going to hand it back over to Amanda to talk us through a bit of what a day could look like, what tools you use, and as well as get into some of the stipend Q&A.
Awesome. Thank you. I really love, when I got here almost a year ago, not quite a year ago, there was nothing like this organization and like understanding of all the different sections of the fellowship. So I really love to see the fellowship sort of grow and mature over the last couple of months. But how will you actually be spending your day to day if you become an MLH fellow? Well, you'll spend a lot of time writing code and a little bit of time in scheduled meetings. What you'll see here on this slide is anything in gray. So the stand up and the live seminar is scheduled sort of calendared time. Your stand up is when you'll be spending a couple minutes checking in with your pod, making sure that all of your work for that day has been done. If you've run into any issues, you'll be able to share it with your pod mates, your pod leader, and get yourself unblocked. And then, of course, your live seminar are your learning opportunities, everything from, the interview prep that we were talking about before. I know a bunch of people in chat were excited about that, all the way through to various technical talks and technical topics that you might be asked to attend as a fellow, and all the rest of your time. We did say that it's a pretty hefty time commitment. We expect about 30 hours a week from our fellows, but a lot of that is flexible to your schedule. So for instance, the largest chunk of time that you'll be spending as a fellow is actually contributing to your code base, right? Reading assigned curriculum, using what you've learned to resolve errors, make edits, and submit pull requests. And you can do that on your own time. So for instance, I know I saw a question in chat about like, can you do this if you have other time commitments? We actually had a fellow in a recent semester who was doing this and also dealing with, childcare responsibilities on the side. She's like, how am I going to split my time between these things? My answer to her is my answer to everyone in the chat, which is it is on you to sort of manage your time here. You do have to do the things you committed to and said you were going to do. But other than that, your time is your own. And a lot of this work can happen in the evenings or in the middle of the day or on the weekend if that is what makes the most sense for you. Over on the right-hand side, you'll see just some of the professional tools that you'll be using as a fellow, which is just additional sort of feather in your cap when you go off to look for your next project or your next contract or your next job, to be able to say that you've used these tools in a professional context. All right, and so then let me just very quickly refresh my slides here. I want to make sure to get you the absolute most up-to-date information on something that's on everybody's mind, which is this a stipended program? Hold on, let's put this back up here. Share screen. Boom. Done. There we go. All right. So a question we get a lot is, how do I afford to do this program? You're asking for a lot of time from me. What is this a stipended program? Is this a paid program? So I want to be clear. The fellowship is an educational program first. It's not a job. You're not salaried. This is not an hourly wage. But we are really, really proud to offer a stipend to students who participate in the program. It is an educational stipend meant to be used on educational expenses that you incur during or have in anticipation of the program, as you can see on the slide there. It's generally paid out twice throughout the fellowship, once at the midpoint. So it's paid, your total stipend is paid out in two halves, right? You'll get half of it at the midpoint of your program and the other half at the end of your program. So one payment at about 6 weeks in and another payment at about 12 weeks in. The stipend is adjusted for geography. So if you are in the US, your stipend will be $3,600 USD. If you are in another country, that amount is adjusted via purchasing power parity for your country. So as a couple of examples, we have some examples up on the screen of what that means. So $3,600 US roughly translates to these other amounts in other countries. Obviously, we didn't want to put every single country in the world up on the slide, so we didn't. But if you have questions about your particular situation or your particular country, please drop us an email at help@fellowship.mlh.io, and we will happily answer that question for you. Excellent. One final thing I want to make sure to say about this is that these numbers change, right? Like purchasing power parity is adjusted by like the World Bank on a regular basis. Project stipulations might change. Different partners might quote us something different or something higher or lower than this. So this is meant to be something for you to plan around. If you're choosing between the fellowship and something else, or if you're thinking about whether this is something that you can fit into your schedule, we wanted you to have at least some idea of what this might look like so that you can make an educated decision. But know that it really is very personal based on where you live, what project you're on, what track you're doing, and so on and so forth. I hope that all makes sense. And I see we're handling that in the chat as well. So we have some answers for you there. So let's specifically talk about some things we're excited about for this summer's fellowship. So I saw some questions in the chat about when is the program? When is it starting? What's going on? So our summer program, we anticipate will be our largest group of fellows that we will ever that we've ever sat since 2020. We're looking to bring in about 240 fellows for the summer. We're actually thinking we're going to run, this is a little bit tentative, but we're thinking we're going to run two different start dates. A start date in May for folks in Asia Pacific and the Americas, and a start date in June for folks who are in European time. And that is mostly to account for school schedules. We realized that May 31st in America is after most school semesters have ended, but it is right smack in the middle of finals week for a lot of students who are in European countries. So we were like, you know what? Why not both, right? Por qué no los dos? Let's do both. Let's make sure we can have students from all parts of the world participate in the fellowship this summer. We will be offering all 3 tracks that we talked about earlier. We will have open source projects, we will have externship projects, and we will have production engineering projects. And here are just some of the partners that we anticipate working with this summer. And you'll notice we have them split up into 3 different sort of types, if you will. This is how we talk about our partners internally. We have your big names, your sort of big fish, if you will. We are going to be working with Meta again. We're working with Amazon for at least the 3rd or 4th semester in a row. We've been working with Amazon for a long time. And then, of course, GitHub, who've been our partners in the fellowship since the start. We will have projects with these companies. But I also want to point out that we have some companies that we're calling sort of our lesser known gems, right? For those of you who are in North America, we signed a deal for this summer semester with Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, which is a really well-known and prestigious healthcare organization here in the United States, who's going to be looking for people to work with them. Royal Bank of Canada is an organization we've worked with for a couple semesters and intend to work with again. And in the UK, we're working with G Research. Both of these are, they're not quite the household names that an Amazon would be, but we've now worked with them enough and have had enough fellows working on their projects and working with their maintainers that we know they are just a really great and welcoming home for any fellows that end up working with them. And then last but not least, of course, you have your sexy startups. These are your VC-backed startups. They're small but mighty. They're growing like crazy, and they're really looking for some amazing technical talent. You have your Bento ML, your Synthesis, and of course, your Solana, which I know we've been chatting about in chat a little bit there. So, and this is just, I want to be clear, this is just some of the partners we're going to work with this summer. It is only February. There will be more interesting and intriguing projects and more partners to announce as time goes on. So if you're excited about these, fantastic. But know that we also are going to have potentially lots and lots more to talk about as the weeks and months go by. So now what I'd like to do is invite Guillermo on stream with me again, because I'd really love to get to know a little bit more about him and his experience. As we talked about earlier in the presentation, Guillermo has had kind of every role you can have in the fellowship. He's been a fellow. He's been an admissions specialist. So I think I saw some people in chat say, hey, Guillermo, I remember you from my interview. That's because he used to do admissions interviews. And now he is a pod leader. I've been working with him since, last summer? And he's been just an absolutely fantastic person to have on the team. So yeah, you can kick us off by telling us a little bit about what got you, how did you find out about the fellowship? What made this something you decided to participate in?
Yeah, I found out about the fellowship through one of my friends in college, actually, who joined, I think it was batch 2 or batch 1. And he worked on an iOS project, and he showed me the I would also help him with stuff that he was working on, and I thought it was really cool that the fellowship actually does have these opportunities to be working on, and I decided to give it a shot after that for the production engineering fellowship right after that spring that he was doing it in, and I was able to join the production engineering fellowship.
That's awesome. So I'm imagining there's a lot of people watching us right now who are either current applicants or are thinking of applying. And applying to a program like this, I'm sure can feel sort of, daunting or intimidating. So what advice would you have for folks who are thinking of applying? And what was your application process like?
Let's see. For the first question, tips for applying, I really, really emphasize a lot in the essays. You really have to show, that's the only part you get to showcase who you are in a couple of words. But another tip that I also have is working on lots of projects. And the best way to do that is joining hackathons. I mean, MLH is there for hackathons as well. And I've only been a participant once, but I've mentored for hackathons to a ton of them. because I have a club on campus that I started, and we teach like iOS to other students and everything. And I've been able to join a lot of these hackathons as a mentor and help a lot of students. And that also helped me in my own skills in getting better at explaining technical concepts, which is something that you'll really need in the interview process. Being able to explain what your project does, how you worked on it, what are some issues you encountered, and how can you make it better? And the second question, what was your second question again, Amanda?
Sort of like, what was your admissions process like? Did you think it would be scary? Was it scary? Like that kind of thing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was pretty scary since it's been a while since I've been applying to stuff, especially since during that school year, I was mainly focused on just my club and like growing it. And I was like, do I have time to like be involved in fellowship? And I was like, yeah, let's do it. So I applied. I got an email actually from Swift, one of the founders, and that's because I subscribed to the email list. And he said, hey, are you interested in production engineering? And I said, yes, sign me up. And then I immediately got like through the process. I got a notification saying that I got an interview pending, and that's when I first got into the, what was that first, the behavioral interview, where they ask
Mhm.
questions about you, just about your personality, how you are doing in your previous school projects and everything. And then the final rounds, which is a technical interview, you have to be really prepared to communicate. And for that, I think the best way is by working on projects together and practicing with friends, sharing what you've worked on. And I think that will really help you boost the confidence in explaining technical concepts.
That's such good advice, and I wanna highlight that because that came up a couple times in your answer. Is that it's not it's not just whether you are a good technologist, whether you can write code. It's also about your communication skills, right? Whether you can explain your code
Yeah.
to other people, whether you can talk out a coding problem with someone else, right? Because that's something you'll have to do with your pod, with your maintainers, someday in your job interviews, and then someday again actually on the job, right? So for those
Yeah.
of you who are nervous about potentially applying, know that it is, yes, it is about your code, and that is not, it's not that that's not important, but a great way to like get yourself ready for the admissions process is to get some practice talking about your code. Like you said, go to a hackathon, present a project, talk to a friend about something you're building. Every one of us can do that, and it will absolutely improve your performance and your chances in our interviews.
Hmm.
I do have another question for you, Guillermo, because I know I get this question all the time. One thing we ask for in the application, I'm actually getting questions in the chat about it right now, actually. One thing I get asked about the application a lot is, what should I submit as my code sample? Because you have your essays and your application, but then you also have the code sample that you need to send in, a project or something that you've worked on. How did you decide what to send in as your code sample?
I chose the project that I was most proud of. In my case, it was a Python and Flask web application, and it performed data analytics on using Yelp's API. So you can see how it connects a lot of technologies already, right? You have Python, you have front end technologies like the basic good old HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and then also a little bit of data science in there, because I love, it was for a data science class that I was taking during college. And last but not least, also using an API, some form of data to get. And in my example, I chose Yelp's API to get data from them, and then I did some, what's it called, sentiment analysis on it, and I showed the bar charts on how to present the data. And it was a really cool project that I worked on with one of my friends during college that really, really makes me stand out in my interviews, not just for the fellowship.
I love that. And how experienced would you say you were when you wrote that project? Like, how long had you been coding?
That was oh, how long have I been coding? I've been doing 2 years of college, but during that time. So, and in my college, we've been learning Python for 1 year straight, and then I also did Java for one quarter. And
Got
but
it.
the project itself, that was my very first time learning Python, Flask, how to use APIs. Like everything was all coming down together in that one project. So it was my first time
Nice.
essentially putting all the technologies together.
Fantastic. That's great. And then, so this is my last question for you, Guillermo. I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit, but hopefully you're into it. I notice on your slide here, you're an incoming engineer at Intuit. So you have also had some success this year in terms of looking for a job and building your career. Tell us a little bit about what the job search process has been like.
It's been crazy, but luckily I started applying this January, end of January. Actually, yeah, it's pretty recent, and I've been able to grab some offers from many companies. I'm talking about like Goldman Sachs, Cisco, obviously Intuit, a startup called Easy Post, and Moody's Analytics. What are some other companies? Yeah, I kind of lost track, but I've definitely been getting a good amount of offers, but I'm happy to choose Intuit.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And congratulations. That's not an easy thing to do. Interviewing, I'm sure, can be exhausting, but also exciting. And we are so proud of all of your success and proud that you can be a pod leader for us. So thank you very, very much. And I'm sure we'll have you back on stream again before all is said and done here. Sound good?
Sounds great. Thank you.
All righty. So I am gonna sort of bring us home a little bit and finish our conversation today with some admissions tips. We have had lots of good questions in the chat about how do I make myself a good applicant? What should I do? How do I help myself stand out? Gosh, you guys get a lot of applicants. That's scary. What do I do? So if you walk away from this session knowing nothing else, the things I'm going to share with you guys over the next couple of slides are going to help make you the strongest applicant you can possibly be. That's what we're here for today. So let's get right to it. First of all, I just wanted to put up this image here, which is the general timeline of what admissions looks like. The first thing, of course, is you'll fill out your application on our website. Many of you in the chat, I think, have probably already done this. If you have applied for the summer, which I think many of you have, we are just now starting to review summer applications. So I would expect that you'll hear from us regarding any next steps or regarding moving forward to interview within the next couple of weeks. So keep an eye on your email. We are definitely going to be paying attention to that very, very shortly. The first thing that happens is we review your application, we read your essays, we look at your technical experience, we look at your code sample, and we say, is this someone who we think can move forward, we think would be a strong fellow? If yes, we'll invite you to, as Guillermo described it, the behavioral interview or the general interview, which is not a technical interview. That is an interview just about you and your life and your experience, where you're located, your hours of availability, and your motivation for wanting to do the program. If that goes well, we will advance you to a technical interview where you do talk about your code sample and a project that you've built. And if that goes well, we'll advance you to a final decision. And if you're admitted, we will send you through the matching process and get you matched to a project that matches your professional and personal goals. So that's the admissions process in a nutshell. And here are my top 5 tips for how to stand out in the application process and make yourself the strongest applicant you can possibly be. The first one is, please do not wait to apply. Apply as early as you can feel like you're ready. I see questions in the chat about prep. We're going to get there in tip number 5. So we're going to get there, I promise. But my first tip is, don't hesitate on your application. For our most recent batch, our spring batch, which started at the end of January, over half of the applications were submitted by mid-November. So over 2 months before the program started. That means that for summer, by the end of March, by March 31st, over half of all of our applications will have already been submitted. Half of your competition, if you will already be in. So if you want to take some time, really think about your application, think about your code sample, but don't wait too long, because the longer you wait, the more seats will fill and the more crowded the field will become. So if you're wondering how long should I wait, my advice is always, as soon as you have something to showcase, please feel free to send in your application. We do review applications on a rolling basis. So as your application comes in, we'll move you into application review, into code sample review, into interview, and so on and so on. So it's not like you'll have to wait too long after you apply. My second tip is, don't forget to invest in your essay responses. Here's a pop quiz, shock of all shocks, of these two applicants, which one would you admit? So the question they're answering here is, there's a question at the end of our application that goes something like, is there anything else you'd like the admissions team to know about you as they review your application? We have applicant number 1. We have applicant number 2. And you could just see how applicant number 2 has brought in all of these projects that they've been a part of. They're talking about, reviewing code. They have a strong command of this and that. And they're really, talking about how excited they are and how passionate they are about this field, about the things that they know how to do. Like, all else being equal, applicant number 2 is going to get invited to interview a lot faster than applicant number 1 is. So I recognize that for a lot of folks, it's like the thing that you often try to sweat is your code sample, but don't shortchange your essays. Your essays are your first impression that you're making to the admissions committee and the admissions specialists. They matter. So don't just blow right past them. They are actually really important. Related to that, my advice to you really is to showcase your passion, showcase what makes you unique and interesting. Here we have a code sample description from an applicant who ultimately got in and is a Spring Fellow right now as we speak. They heard that we were partnering with Solana. They were like, oh my God, the blockchain is freaking awesome. I really want to work with this company. And what did they do? They provided a code sample that was a wedding registry app that was built in the Solana ecosystem, just so that they could show us, like, I am so excited about this technology. I am so excited about the potential and what we can build with this. I'm going to build something just for this, just to show how excited I am. And lo and behold, this person is now a Solana Fellow in the Spring Fellowship. So if there's something you really love, if there's something you're super excited about and super passionate about, show us that. Show us your personality, because when I look at this person's application, I go, oh, it's very clear to me that this person it would be a phenomenal fit in terms of like passion and dedication and interest for a Solana project. So if the project is strong, I would love to match this person to Solana. They're clearly over the moon about it. And that is ultimately what ended up happening. So show us what you're interested in, and it makes it so much easier for us on the admission side to imagine you involved in these projects. And I know a few of you have said in chat, I got rejected or I got moved forward. What did I do wrong? It's entirely possible you didn't do anything wrong. With the kinds of application numbers that we see, sometimes it's just a matter of timing. And I really want to showcase this number. I ran this number a couple days ago because I wanted to know what it was, and this is so important. 47%, so about half of our Spring Fellows who got in and who are currently Spring Fellows had applied at least once and had previously been rejected. Some of them had applied 2, 3, or 4 times and had been rejected. And now they got in because we had the right project at the right time with the right company and the right tech stack and so on. That includes the Solana Fellow. The person who I showcased on the previous slide. They had applied before, did not get in. But what did they do? They did their research. They said, I want to be matched to this particular company. I'm super excited about it. I'm going to focus on that, and I'm going to showcase how excited I am about it. And here they are in the program right now. So please, please, please don't be discouraged. I see some folks saying encouraging things in the chat. Thank you for doing so. Never lose hope. Sometimes it's just not your semester, and maybe the next semester will be your semester. And then last but not least, consider applying to our prep program. Prep is a 3-week long, absolutely free introductory course that we offer several times throughout the year. The technical requirements are not as steep as they are for, say, our software engineering track or our production engineering track. You do need to have proficiency in at least one programming language, but you can be a little bit more beginner. And like I said, we run them throughout the year. And fellows who complete MLH 14 times more likely to get accepted than those who apply without having done prep first. So if you're looking for that extra little cherry on top of your application, this is how to do it. If you haven't already applied to prep, go apply to prep. Our April prep program we're accepting applications for right now. And so that is my tip for all of you. So let's talk about what happens next. Well, today was the info session. You can scratch that off your list. You're good. We will have more info sessions throughout the spring. There's an info session at the end of March and another one at the end of April. In the meantime, like I said, April prep starts April 4th and will run for 3 weeks. And then we also have on here what we're calling our estimated last days to apply. And what these are for is just so you know when we are likely to have sort of met our applicants' requirement in different regions of the world. We have a different number of projects available for fellows in North America, for instance, than we do for fellows in Europe, than we do for fellows in Asia Pacific. So we know how many applications we can accept, and we will start closing applications when we hit that threshold. So Asia Pacific, April 15. North America or South America, May 23rd. EU or UK is going to be a little later, likely going to be in June, because again, we think we're going to run a special European start date at the end of June for those of you who are in the UK or the EU or similar time zones. So you might want to screenshot this. We'll send out the recording, but you might want to get this down because these are your important dates to remember. And the right day to apply is as early as you can, as early as you feel ready. So let's bring it home. We have a couple minutes. I think we answered a lot of questions in the chat. But in the meantime, I think a few more new ones have come in. So what questions do you all have? Please start typing away.
I have a couple of questions that I've just been tracking, Amanda, that I'll speak to. The production engineering track being open to all. So that's a program that is specific to North America, given the partners that are looking for graduates of those programs right now. So that program, production engineering, is specific to North America, US, Canada, and Mexico. There is a question for Guillermo that I'm keen to hear the answer to as well, because I've heard this too. But how do you manage time between the fellowship and college?
Luckily for me, I did the one in the summer, so I won't be able to answer that one very well since I did it in the summer. But from what I've noticed in my pod, a lot of my fellows that are doing it right now, since it's spring semester, they just do it. Either they just do it and they have like some really hard classes, but they're able to manage the time and put in the effort, and they ended up realizing that, wow, I didn't realize that I have this much potential to actually keep up with the fellowship and school. And others, they decided to fix their schedule so that they're taking like really easy classes and it won't conflict so much with the fellowship. So those are the two methods that I've seen. Just do it, or fix your schedule and make it so that you'll be having a really light load through the semester.
And I think to highlight Guillermo's answer there, summer is a fantastic time to do this. I expect we will have a higher number of applicants for the summer semester than the spring semester for that exact reason. Folks will have more time and they'll be able to dedicate it to the fellowship. Jay, what else you got for us?
Oh, those are the two big ones, Amanda. You put me on the spot. I can answer some other ones that are coming in here. Yeah, I think, is there any Ethereum or Polygon projects during the spring term? Right now, a lot of our spring projects were focused on Web3 through the Solana space, but it's something we're thinking actively about and in talks with other partners about. As soon as those were to become official, we will certainly share that information. This question comes up quite often from what I've seen in the chat. How many applicants apply? Again, we expect to collect between 12,000 and 15,000 this year, and we do intend to close the applicant window for particular time periods. If we left it open, we'd have over 25,000, I think, no question. How many applications are accepted from Africa is another good one. I mean, we get a ton of applications from Africa. We have a number of fellows from Africa in this current batch. So I'd say it's hard to say a number offhand, but I'd say multiple. We do have multiple fellows as part of the program from Africa right now. And we do get a lot of applications from Africa. Anything else in here?
I think we
Anyone
are
else?
more or less at time, but I'd love to just take a broad. There's a question that's come in. Is like, how do I make my code sample stand out? And I'm just gonna like zoom out and say, how do I make my application stand out? And I would say, I'm gonna sound a little bit like a broken record here, but the answer is like showcase what you're excited about, right? The whole reason that Solana project worked for that particular fellow was because that person was genuinely excited about this technology and what they could build with it, and like getting their fingers dirty and all of that, and it came across in their application, right? So if the thing you're super excited about, I used to talk to a lot of folks who went to the boot camp I used to work at, and they would say, well, I got my start in programming through like Neopets or something like that. And they'd be all embarrassed. I'd be like, that's not embarrassing. That's amazing, because that's something you enjoyed and it's something that lit you up inside. And if you want to build a project based on that, that's what your project should look like, right? So showcase what you're excited about, showcase the things you're proud of, right? Guillermo said that in his interview. I shared a project I was really proud of. I'm sure that came across in Guillermo's interviews. And I'm sure his interviewer said, you know what, this guy's so excited about this thing that he built. I bet he would be a really exciting fellow. And now here he is, right? So I would say, just to put a cherry on all of this, show us what you're passionate about. Show us how excited you are about this industry, and about learning to code and about being the best technologist you can be. And that is the thing that's going to help your application rise above the pile. I guarantee you. Any other finishing thoughts, Jay or Guillermo?
Nothing from my end. Just really excited to see this, roll into the summer and this new batch of alumni to finish with Guillermo and the rest of the current fellows.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So we are gonna send out to everybody who's on the chat, everybody who RSVP'd. We're gonna send out the link to the recording of this, as well as some other answers to questions that we weren't able to get to in the chat. Have wonderful rest of your day, everybody. They're playing me off, so have a wonderful afternoon. And I hope to see your application soon. Bye.